Hello and welcome. I'm Keegan Hurst and this is The Hurst Locker, the podcast for men who want to build an incredible body, a rock-solid mindset and unstoppable confidence. It's for men who want to live life on their terms and live it to their full potential. I've helped hundreds of men transform their lives, giving them the knowledge, the tools and the self-belief to help them smash through the glass ceiling that stopped them from achieving their dreams. And I want to do the same for you. Now we're going to focus on physical, mental and emotional health, things that affect us as gay men so that we can live life on our terms, build the body that we want and feel confident living that life. I'm going to help you cut through the noise and confusion to give you the confidence and clarity to take action and build the best version of yourself, to give you complete control of your body, your mindset, your habits and ultimately your life. So let's get to it. Hello and welcome to this episode of The Hurst Locker. In this week's episode, I want to talk to you about changing course, all right? Sometimes, often actually, life throws a curveball at us, doesn't it, right? Sometimes it's a crisis and it derails us. Sometimes it's something huge that comes out of the blue and we've got to manage it like a giant iceberg, hopefully better than the Titanic did. Quite often, we just need to change course. Not stop and try and restart, as so many people do. How many times have you heard people or even said it yourself, oh, I'm just going to have a restart. I'm just going to start again. I'm just going to... Often, it's not helpful, right? We just need to shift gear and reroute. Something I always... a mentor once told me, and it's something that I pass on to my clients, is that when we always want to move away from this all or nothing mindset, right? Life is not black and white. Life is not yes or no, right or wrong. There's a lot of gray areas. And one thing that I always say to my clients is that when my clients leave me, I want them to never, ever say the words, I'm back on it, ever again. Because you should never be off it, right? Now, that might sound really intimidating that you've got to be 100%, but that's where this changing course and shifting gears is really important. It's not about going 0 or 100 miles an hour, 0 or 100%. It's about being able to slow things down. The best analogy that I can give it is think of it as like a DJ's mixing desk, right? And if you put everything up to 100%, and it stays there, it's just going to blow the speakers, all right? It's going to fuck everything up. So sometimes there are certain things that we have to dial down, maybe not all the way. So your health might be one, relationships, career, socializing, personal development. Think they might all be things on your DJ mixing desk, and you might want to dial them down. But it's never 100% or off. We can lower and we can get a different blend, if you will, and you're going to get a different outcome, right? As you dial things up or down. So as you guys know, I have been learning to box lately, right? I was doing a boxing match, which has now subsequently been cancelled. So how that came about, I got asked to do this boxing event. At the time, I was learning to swim because I was going to do a triathlon. That was just something that I've wanted to do to challenge myself, try and fill the gap that rugby left. You know, I am competitive. I like to be doing something, be working towards something. It's something that tickles my pickle, all right? So triathlon was a good idea in theory, but I actually can't swim very well, or I couldn't swim very well. How I would describe it is I could not drown. So I went and I had lessons, and I was going once a week, having lessons with a coach, and then I was going and doing a few sessions on my own, and I was getting better at it. I was getting better. I was getting more confident, more comfortable in the water. I could go longer without feeling like my lungs were going to explode. And you know, I was getting there, and then I got asked to do the boxing match. You know, I've never boxed in my life. Literally, I don't think I've thrown a punch in anger since I was about 12. Even on the field, I'd just give someone a little niggle in the tackle. You know, not a full-on smacking someone in the chops. So when boxing came around, I figured I need to pivot here. I need to change things up a bit, because swimming is all well and good, but I don't think it's going to be much use when, a 15-stone man's trying to whack me in the grid. So I had to change course. I had to use a different tack, use a different approach. Even though it's still a fitness activity, it's a different skill set. It's a different mindset. It's a different outcome. Einstein said if you keep doing the same thing and expect a different result, that's a definition of insanity. So if I was to go boxing, if I was to go swimming and expect to get better at boxing, you do the math. So then I had to pivot, and I had to go to training for boxing. So that meant conditioning. It meant the type of weights that I was doing changed. It meant that my conditioning sessions changed. They weren't long, drawn out ones like they might have been for getting better at triathlon. They were shorter and sharper and more intense, like a boxing match is going to be. I had to go and do specific, boxing specific training with a coach on my own, on the bags, shadow boxing, all that kind of stuff. I had to get specific. I had to engineer the route that I was going to get to the new outcome. Think of it as setting off on a journey somewhere, and not only is there traffic, but now the destination has moved as well. So if I kept on the same route, I'm going to end up in the wrong place, right? And this is it's really important to bear in mind that changing course is not a failure. It doesn't mean that you failed. And I'm not just talking about in training. Quite recently, last few months, I came out of a long-term relationship because it wasn't going in the direction that I wanted it to go in. It wasn't. I wasn't going to end up in the place that I wanted to be. So I have to change tack, and I have to adapt, improvise, overcome. Because if I'd have kept going down the same route, I would have ended up at a place, as I said, where I didn't want to be. So you will find your groove. The thing that's really important is when you do change course, whether that is in a relationship, whether that is with training, career path. A lot of people are stuck in a career, on a trajectory in their career to a job, to a place that they don't want to be, whether that's an unhealthy work-life balance, whether that's a career that they've actually fallen out of love with. By the end of me retiring from rugby, I was really disillusioned with it. I really didn't like the hypocrisy of how they talked about player welfare and yet did absolutely nothing about it. How they talked about championing diversity and inclusion and then signed Israel for that, all that kind of stuff really pissed me off. And so I changed tack. I reflected on it and I thought, you know what, this isn't for me anymore. But don't see it as a failure, all right? Because the real failure is if you just stay the course for the sake of it. If you just stay the course because you're worried about what other people think. If you just do it because you've always done it, that is a really dangerous phrase to use. Well, it's always been like that. So what? If everything was like it had always been, society wouldn't be where it's at. We need innovation. We need change. And sometimes it'll be a big change. Sometimes it might be a small change. But, they say when an aeroplane goes to its destination, if it's 1 degree out of where it's supposed to be going by, over 1,000 miles, that translates into being way off course. So if you think about you as the aeroplane, the destination being where you want to be when you're 40, 50, 60, 70 years old, and the journey is, I hate that word, but it's actually appropriate here. Journey is, your life is the travel there. If you are off course by 1 degree, you're going to end up way up away from where you want it to be. So you've got to be willing to reflect, test, and adjust. It's something the RAF use all the time when they're talking about plans and strategizing. Test and adjust. Are we still on track for what I had originally wanted? Do we still want that objective? Should we change how we're going to achieve the objective or change the objective itself. Are we on track as we are? You test, you reflect, you adjust if necessary. A homing, I don't know why I'm using lots of military stuff at you today, but a homing missile, you would assume that it just kind of goes, A to B, and it knows exactly where it's going, but it's actually, it tests to see if it's on track like every couple of seconds, and it just keeps doing these tiny little adjustments so it gets there. So rather than it being this kind of single line, if you were to actually track it, it'd be like a really zigzaggy, tiny zigzag line, because it comes too far the other way, and it adjusts and comes back. But think of all the times, when we're talking about testing, adjusting, and changing the course, whether I've spoken there about relationship, I spoke about training, but even on a bigger scale, I got married and had kids. Like, that was a course that I'd set myself on. I had my two kids, 20 and 23, 24. I was married at 23, and at 27, I kind of come to terms with and came out. And I think about what if I had not done that? Well, to be honest, I probably won't be doing. I certainly won't be doing this podcast, would I? But it's not a sense of failing. Sometimes you have to have a breakdown before you have a breakthrough. I know that sounds quite cliched, but it's really important to know that because you've changed your goal, your values change all the time. What you want out of life changes all the time. I know people who grew up, when they were younger, and all they wanted were kids and a family, and then they experience, they have great success at the career, at the career, or travel, and then they go off and travel and they never have kids, and that's completely fine. It's not, do not be trapped by your own old goals, because your values change, your priorities change, what you want and you as a person changes. Adaptation is key. Adaptation, that's not even a word. Adaptation is key. Adaptation. I think it's the Marines who's, again, the military, improvise, adapt and overcome. All right? Life lesson learned. Adaptation is key. So whether you're in a relationship, whether you're not feeling fulfilled from your training, from your goals, from your career, from your partner, from your general trajectory. God, that's it. Not easy to say with Invisaligns in. Trajectory. The general way that you're going is not where you want to end up, then don't be scared to change tact. Readjust and go again. Test and adjust. Remember that. So, yeah. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Hearse Locker. I would love if you could drop us a review, a comment. If there's anything that you found valuable in this, drop me a message on Instagram as well. I'm always on there. Really appreciate your support. Thank you, and I will see you next week on the Hearse Locker.